I apologize for the relative mess that's behind me. I've been living in this studio for a year, and it's taken until just now for me to finally start putting things on the wall, but it's still a work in progress. It's a WIP, and this is WIW. Welcome to Week in Weird. Welcome to Week in Weird for the week ending July 3rd. My name is GiBi. Our first story today is one that might interest people. Yeah, I mean, that's kind of the point. Dinosaur with oldest ever belly button is discovered in 125-million-year-old fossil from China. Belly buttons in quotes because dinosaurs don't have belly buttons because they were born from eggs. The oldest belly button ever was found by paleontologists on a 125-million-year-old fossil of a biped in China. The barely perceivable navel mark belongs to a reptile in the... to dinosaur. Researchers note that dinosaurs did not have umbilical cords, unlike humans, because they laid eggs. Look at this beautiful, artistic rendition. Look at his face there. Instead, the yolk sac of dinosaurs was directly attached to the body via a slit-like opening, also found in other egg-laying land animals. It is this opening that's sealed up about the time the animal hatches, leaving a distinctive long umbilical scar. So basically the point is that egg-laying animals sometimes have fake belly buttons, and that this is the oldest one of those. 125 million years ago. This particular fossil, which is well preserved, was heralded last year for having the first dinosaur butthole ever discovered. You think that the headline would start with that. The anatomy is unique. Study lead researcher Jacob Winter, a paleobiologist at the University of Bristol in the United Kingdom, told Live Science. It doesn't quite look like the opening on birds, which are the closest living relative of dinosaurs. It's its own cloaca, shaped in its perfect, unique way, Vinther said. Earlier in the year, we had that Lego tiger butthole. Now I'm talking about dinosaur buttholes. I think a video was demonetized recently because Loxton was talking about Pokemon buttholes, so I really hope that doesn't happen to this. This is science, guys. Dinosaurs. Now, if you're not keeping up with modern cinematic masterpieces, you may not know that a new Baz Luhrmann movie is out about Elvis Presley. Baz Luhrmann is, of course, the genius director who brought us Romeo plus Juliet, which was a retelling of Romeo and Juliet with not a single line of dialogue changed, but it takes place in the modern day and they use guns. And by modern day, I mean the early 90s when the movie was made. So he decided to make an Elvis biopic and used modern pop songs in the soundtrack, because of course he did. And the headline is that Top Gun Maverick, which is beyond its first month in theaters, and Elvis, which was debuting this week, tied in the box office for first place, which is a very rare occurrence. In its opening weekend, Elvis amassed $30.5 million, while Top Gun collected the exact same amount in its fifth weekend for North America. Other interesting things is that Top Gun is now Tom Cruise's biggest movie of all time. It's at $521 million, and it's also really good. A box office tie is a rare occurrence, and particularly when there's a battle for the top spot, there is intense interest in the results given the importance of claiming a victory. For both films, this is a big deal. A #1 debut for Elvis is obviously a big win, and for Maverick, jumping back into the top spot in weekend 5 is no small feat. Our next story comes to us from The Verge. Robot umpires could be coming to Major League Baseball in 2024. 2 years from now, in baseball stadiums around the US, the umpire behind home plate might be little more than a mouthpiece for a robot. Major League Baseball plans to introduce robot umpires in the 2024 season, the MLB commissioner told ESPN this week. He framed the change as a way to speed up games, but anyone who's watched baseball the last few years will tell you that a machine would almost certainly call balls and strikes better than humans do. For what is basically the oldest sport that anybody in America still cares about, baseball has certainly taken on more automation, innovation, robots than the other major sports in America have in the past few years. There's two different ways that this robot umpire might be implemented. One is the fully automated version, in which the AI-powered system would call every pitch either a ball or a strike and then relay that call to the umpire. Or the MLB could decide to use the AI as a review system. So they would still be using the human umpire, but if the other team challenges the call, then they would refer back to the AI. The article also makes reference to the fact that for decades at this point, there's been what they call the strike zone that you see superimposed on a TV broadcast of a baseball game. Basically, there's a little rectangle that you see next to the guy, and it tracks where the ball comes in, and so basically if you're watching on TV, you know if it's a ball or a strike before the umpire says anything because the camera's tracking it. If we've put our faith in that on TV for the last 2 decades, then we can probably do it to call actual balls and strikes with an actual AI system. It notes that the robot system is more accurate than humans, but that it also tends to call more strikes than a human would, which either means that humans are calling more balls than they should, or that the AI needs to be adjusted. Either way, it would change the outcome of several games. Speaking of games, that's my only segue. Die-hard Nintendo fans spent over $40,000 buying stock, and then at a shareholders meeting, asked top executives why the company won't make more of his fan-favorite series, that being F-Zero. Basically, the way this works is that if you own a certain number of stocks in the company, you get to go to their shareholder meeting and ask questions, and so in order to reach that threshold, this guy had to buy $40,000 worth of stocks. A gamer said he spent over 5.6 million Japanese yen, or just over $40,000, on Nintendo stock, and used this opportunity to ask a question during the Japanese gaming giant's annual shareholder meeting. The fan asked the president of Nintendo whether the company had considered relaunching some fan-favorite franchises, specifically F-Zero, which is a racing game that hasn't been seen since 2004. The fan, who is based in Japan, used an online translator to communicate with Insider Magazine over Twitter, and told them that he bought 100 shares at 56,000 yens a share in February after selling his stock in another company. He wants to remain anonymous, but his Twitter handle translates to Die-Hard Nintendo Fan. I have been playing Nintendo games since I was a child, he told Insider. Among all, that sense of speed in F-Zero is the best. Apparently, the response from the Nintendo president was, "It is realistically difficult to develop new titles and remakes, including sequels, for every Nintendo game that people request. But we are very grateful and appreciate the expectations our fans have for our games." And that, of course, explains why Mario Kingdom Battle, which has the Rabbids from Rayman in it, just got a sequel this week. Speaking of the Rabbids from Rayman Raving Rabbids, the new Minions movie just came out. There's been this long-standing thing that the Minions are a total ripoff of the Rabbids from Rayman. And one of the interesting things about the new Minions movie coming out, as somebody who works at a movie theater, is seeing all the people following that TikTok trend of coming to see the Minions movie dressed in tuxedos and dresses and basically just as fancy of clothes as they can find. Now, there's two different groups of people who have been doing this little adventure, this little meme. There's the people who really commit to the joke. They got top hats, they got jewel-encrusted canes, they speak in British accents, and they just come up to the counter and they just order one ticket to the Minions Rise of Gru and maybe a popcorn, and then they go sit in their seat with their legs crossed with the curtails of their jacket sitting underneath their seats, and they just sit there like this for the whole movie and they enjoy it, and they do it, and they're doing it for themselves. And to those people I say, I wish that my life was as interesting as yours. The other group of people is the group of 14-year-olds who are coming in with their loose-fitting jackets, and they walk in and they're giggling so hard about how funny this prank is that when they get up to the counter, they can't even order a ticket because they can't get out the words, I'd like a ticket for Minions. Yeah, don't do that. If you're gonna do this, you gotta commit. You gotta come in as a group of 16 people, where 8 of the guys are in tuxes and 8 of the girls are in prom dresses, and then take prom pictures in front of the Minions poster. You gotta have like a full red carpet event. That's the difference between artwork and cringe. It's how much you commit to your bit. The names you see scrolling by are, of course, my patrons, and as their names scroll by, I'm gonna give you my thoughts on the Minions Rise of Gru. I walked out of the theater. I didn't see the ending. It was genuinely terrible. I don't know what I was expecting, but I was expecting a movie. The way that the movie was formatted really was like every 15 minutes they would find a new scenario to get the characters in, and then they would use that scenario for slapstick. So there would be like the car chase scene, and they would use that scenario to get in all of their car chase slapstick ideas, and then it would end, and then the villain would catch up to them. And so then they would use all of their ideas for the villain has the hero in their grasp slapstick ideas. And then they would do a parody of a kung fu movie, and then they would do everyone changes into a monster parody. And it was just one thing after another. It's basically like if you strung together a bunch of Wile E. Coyote cartoons, and they were barely hung together by the loosest plot you could possibly imagine. Also, it's just really not as fun for whatever reason seeing 3D models of little squishy Twinkies getting beat up versus like Elmer Fudd. So that's my in-depth review of the Minions. I hope that was very enlightening. Thank you for watching. Make sure to subscribe for next week's episode of Week in Weird.